So the first video I did was about chickens. And people who subscribe to the channel early would say, well, it's just chickens on there. Why you just have chickens and that's it? And yeah, it took me a long time to get to the point of explaining it. And I'm here tonight to explain it. As a child, I was always called a chicken. My parents, my sibling would say, oh, you're a chicken. You're so afraid of this, and you're afraid of the dark, and you're afraid of airplanes, and you're afraid of bugs, and you're afraid of this. And, I never understood the correlation between the actual chicken and my fears. When I started raising chickens in the Ozark, and I saw how they would run away when I come inside the coop, or how they would huddle and how they would act differently, then I started to remember being called a chicken as a child. I started to remember my fears. I started to remember all the things that I was afraid of as a child. And it's really interesting because there are some things that I was chicken about as a child that I'm still dealing with and didn't realize I was dealing with it. For example, when I moved on my homestead, it was pitch black. I mean, completely dark on my land. And here I was on my land, living out of my car. And nothing else was there except a well and two shacks. That's it. And the first thing I did was go on Amazon and buy all these solar lights to try to light up my land. And it looked really beautiful when I was putting them around my land, on the ground, and wherever I could get them on. But I really must admit, I think that was led from being afraid of my childhood fears of the dark. Now, mind you, the dark was beautiful. It was so beautiful when you're up there living on that hill and you look up at the sky. It looked like the stars are just right on top of you. It's like you can almost like jump up and touch them. I mean, it would have to be a big jump because I'm pretty short. But it's like almost like you can reach and touch the stars. But for some reason, down on the earth, where I was on the earth, it wasn't enough. I needed to brighten it up somehow. Now, I finally got electricity on the land and got a lamppost on, and that lit up certain areas of my land. But the whole experience brought me back to when I was called a chicken by my brothers, by my family members, because I was afraid of the dark. And I thought I long got over of that fear of the dark, and it returned as an adult, living on my homestead all by myself, living out of my car, and and just feeling uncomfortable of how dark the country gets. And it's interesting when we call people chickens and we make fun of people, and to finally meet the animal that you're being called and to see how they live, and you try to understand the correlation to what you were called and this creature that you're taking care of. So in some weird aspect, am I taking care of my fear? Am I nurturing my fear? It's really interesting. And I can't begin to describe to you how many chicken wings I've eaten in my lifetime. So have I been eating fear? And this is not like a rant about being a plant-based eater, or vegetarian or whatever, pescatarian. It's just you correlate words with the material plane of life, and then you find yourself handling that animal that you were called, and it has a heartbeat, and it does react in a fearful way sometimes, but then you find yourself consuming it. Now, I've never eaten my chickens on my land, but when I think of all the thousands and thousands and millions probably pieces of chicken I've ate in my lifetime, you know, it makes me wonder, have I eaten millions of pieces of fear? Just a weird thing that runs through my mind when I think of chickens and being called chicken. I mean, there's so many fears that we have that we pretend we don't have, especially those of us who are, familiar with scripture. You hear there are 365 or 366 fear nots in the Bible. So we become ashamed to admit that we have fears. But to be honest with you, everyone I've met has had fears. And we know that we are encouraged through biblical literature to not have fears. But we do have fears. And it's ironic that sometimes when we least expect it, we find ourselves faced with a fear that we thought we no longer had. And here it is in our face. And it comes through another channel. So the facing my fear of the dog that I thought I got rid of came through a channel of taking care of chickens and seeing how they would seem afraid when I come into the coop, and remembering that I was called chicken. It's really interesting for me, one subscriber said, "Hey, do you eat them?" And I had to say no. I literally go out to the health food store to buy chicken, to eat chicken, because I can't bring myself to eat my own, and it's predominantly because I think I have some sympathy for their fears. Because it reminds me of my own fear that I buried. And when I hold them and hear their little heartbeat and see how they try to nurture their young and cuddle their young under their wings, for some odd reason, those particular chickens are no longer food. They're more like, hey, they're more like my little buddies. And I just at this time rather go out and buy chickens to eat from the health food store that are organic than to eat my own. The eggs, I do eat them overall, but the majority of them, we give them away to neighbors. And we sometimes feed our dogs and our cats some of the eggs as well. I mean, you some of you might be wondering, well, does that mean you're going to become a vegan or a plant-based eater? I might. I really actually might, especially when it comes to chickens, because I have a newfound respect for them. And I'm really not completely in one accord in my mind on, is there purpose really for me to eat? Or is there purpose on my land for tick control, for insect control? And if I eat them predominantly more than I'm hatching them, then I'm decreasing the population, which is increasing the population of insects and ticks on my land. Those of us who are landowners can probably more so understand what I'm talking about right now. A lot of people in New York, where I'm from, don't have to worry about, especially in the city, in Brooklyn, don't have to worry about ticks because we don't really have deers out here in New York. But in the Ozarks, deers are plentiful. And they're beautiful creatures, but they come with ticks, and they come with some very dangerous ticks as well. Um, I want to know, like, what are some of your ideas about your fears that you thought you got rid of, that are, resurfing in your life in unexpected places. My fear of the dark resurfaced in my life in an unexpected place called my homestead, and it's been an interesting journey to face that alone. My parents have passed away now, so I can't run to their room like I did as a child because I was afraid. And I couldn't run to my sister or my brothers, because I was afraid. I'm a full-fledged adult, and I am dealing with a fear of my past that I had to face. And it's ironic because I'm fully clear that some fears we need to heal from. And I realized that that was just one of my fears that I haven't healed from completely, this fear of the dark. And when I searched the idea of a fear of the dark, is it really the dark? Or is it really the fear of the unknown? Not being able to see the unknown because it's dark, so one cannot anticipate what's coming next because they cannot see it. And these are moments where we have to thank the creator of the universe for giving us sight. These are little things that we take for granted that we can actually even see. I can go and talk about that also, but I won't tonight. But I want to know, like, what are some of your fears that you've thought you got rid of and you realize that you really haven't, and somehow, some way, in the most unassuming circumstance, it surfaces, and it's you recognize it in a different way than you always thought that you dealt with, you know. And I thank you guys for sharing your time with me and listening to me talk about my fears and my chickens. Have a good night. Blessings.